My name is Claire Alexandre. I am a diaspora child, an abolitionist feminist storyteller, student of ecologies. I have been living on Occaneechi territory, also known as Durham, North Carolina, for 7 years now. I actually live a little bit outside of Durham. And I grew up in France. My father is Franco-Caribbean, my mother's American. And I have been painting since 2018. My background is in ecology. I studied environmental science in school, but found it very difficult to relate to the ways that I was learning. And yes, because the tools that we're kind of provide, the mainstream way of understanding environmental science within academia is very reliant on tools of extraction, of categorization, of compartmentalizing, and it distances, on purpose, it distances humans from the natural world. And I, from a very young age, felt very strong feelings for trees and plants and animals, and the ways that I was taught in school to relate to my surroundings wasn't in alignment with what I believed. And so I accumulated a lot of rage over the years throughout college, because on top of that too, I'm not great with numbers. I'm not great with graphs and data. And I found painting kind of on accident. I started painting when I was in Brazil. After college, I bought a one-way ticket, and I just, it's kind of a long story, but I fell into painting. And the second that my first piece was finished, I knew that that is what I was supposed to be doing. I knew that that was really the tools for me to be able to express this love and understanding that I had for the environment. What painting really allowed me to do was to create a curriculum, create an alternate curriculum to what the one that I was provided throughout my childhood and throughout my experience in academia. It is a curriculum that I feel centers Black and Brown folks in particular, because stories of how Black people and Black people's freedom is intimately connected to knowledge of the land. I never learned about that. I never learned about that once. I feel like there's a story that we're told. Yes, the story of how humans are destroying the environment, I don't believe is a complete story, because it's not all of humanity. There are countless narratives of how indigenous people on this land lived in symbiosis with all sorts of plants and animals, and how really their existence complemented each other. And I feel like we've kind of are generalizing the human existence to the Western human existence. And really what I'm trying to do with my pieces is show really all these alternative ways that people and plants coincide, and how the story of people and plants are really complementary. And I really love to dive deep in particularly stories that don't necessarily center the US. And as I said, I started painting in Brazil, and the first pieces that I did explored different Quilombo communities. And Quilombos are basically the communities, a synonym for Quilombo is maroon, or cimarron for the Caribbean and Spanish speaking territories. Yes, and that felt just really so aligned with what my goal was for being an artist, which was kind of share stories of freedom and share stories of how art really helps to create safe spaces and helps to inspire people to archive their stories, share their stories, document, because there's just a lot of things that we are separated from, that colonization has separated us from. And as a diaspora child, I don't know exactly where my people were taken from, and that is a huge harm. And I think what is exciting to me with painting, and I particularly with murals and public art, is that you can pull up a map of all of the places that I have been and see physically where I've altered the landscape. So I feel like there's also just some kind of ancestral alignment with the fact that I do public art, because I'm able to leave a trace for myself in the future, for my descendants in the future. And I know murals have a lifetime of their own, because with the weather, they change, or buildings go up and go down. But still the hope is that there is some kind of long lasting effects that they have, whether within the community, or that there is still some kind of mark, some kind of symbol that's left over. And being able to have that map for me feels really essential. And yeah, so really I do this work for my ancestors. I feel like I come from a long lineage of artists a long lineage of women artists who were not necessarily able to practice their art, who were not taken seriously, who did not necessarily have the time to be painting. But I have this time now, and I'm really so grateful for the gifts that I've been passed down. And the process is really key, and also making the process available and accessible to me feels very important. So I spend a lot of time facilitating workshops or making myself available to talk to people about how it is that I compose a piece. Because I'm self-taught. I don't think at this moment, at least, when people ask me to teach a painting class, I tell them I don't think I can teach a painting class, but I could teach a storytelling class, because that's really what I feel the pieces are. I'm not very good with technique, but I'm good with composition. And how do you think about the different layers that exist in your piece? What are you painting on? What are you painting with? And I'm very intentional with the materials that I use, because I believe that materials really hold essences and energies. And in indigenous teachings, that's something that's very important, that everything around you is somehow related to you, even things that things that don't move, or things that are look very different or have a different way of communicating. Everything has a life, and so everything has a memory and an energy. And so yeah, recently I started painting with soil and using that as a way to kind of capture place and time in a piece. So I'm still doing portraits. I'm painting faces of people, of mentors, of folks who are really important to me in my understanding of how to exist in North Carolina. But I'm using soil that comes from places of power to them, because we come from the ground, and we'll return to the ground once we transition. And so being able to use soil from various places that are connected to these individuals, from ancestral burial grounds to places where they had homes or places where they had memories, it just feels really powerful and really sacred. And yeah, I really, really treasure that. And also just being able to invite the people that I paint these portraits of, invite them to revisit these places, invite them to think about all of these places that they love, and how there's dirt, like how there's dirt underneath all of these things. And yeah, so that's one way that I've been able to use basically place to create a portrait of meaning. I've also been experimenting with paper making lately, and in a very similar fashion, just using dried plants from different places of power or different places of significance. And I really just want people to think about what makes art. And it is not a very expensive paint tube of oil paint, and it's not necessarily, for me at least, it's not connected to the cost value, but it's really just more like everything around you is art, really. You, even yourself, our bodies are our form of art. And because I'm really trying to draw attention to how can we all be stewards of the land in a way that feels respectful of everyone around us, I can't be kind of promoting these ways of living. And for me at least, it wouldn't be right to paint with tubes of paint that I buy off of Amazon, or that I don't, that are still actively kind of reinforcing these systems of exploitation. So I really feel connected to being able to use the gifts of the land directly. And sometimes that means that I make pieces of art really slowly, because that's just what I believe in. And there's also, I think, something really important in portraiture. Most of what I paint is portraits of people. And historically, portraits of Black and Brown folks have been exotified and have really been used to justify further subjugation of these communities. And so I really question, how can I do portraits? I paint portraits in a way that makes me accountable to the person I'm painting and makes them accountable to me as well? Like, how can it be kind of just like a testimony to our mutual love and understanding and respect of each other? And so with the creation of a new portrait, it really kind of means the creation of a new relationship. And that feels like such a gift, because ultimately I really want my art to be about community building and about just collective healing. And so that's really what I try to focus on. Intention for the residency is to really bring in community. Definitely something that I feel very excited about because of the connections that are already in place with the people who are at the gallery, and me being very upfront about what it is that I want to create, and also the folks at the gallery having what I really feel is a deep understanding of what it is I want to do. I feel very excited about breaking away from traditional understandings of an art show, and particularly the solo bit. I don't, at this moment in my life, I'm not interested in solo shows. I don't see the point in just being in conversation with myself. And I am very excited about being able to take up space. And I'm very excited about my artwork really resonating and connecting with so many people, that I didn't come here alone. And I am not going to be continuing by myself. And it just feels really essential to be able to bring along the people who inspire me, the people who make me strong, the people who challenge me, also include them in this space and make it just really a communal space of creativity. That's what feels really exciting to me. And yeah, and so everyone that I've kind of asked to so far about, about taking up space with me feels very also connected to this idea of how can we make our process and our stories just kind of like available for people to interact with, and how can we really, this is really, I think the question that's at the heart of this is, how can we inspire people to just also become artists in their own way? People, I feel like there's just like a general fear of, or just push back against being artists, but really what it means, for me at least, is that you're just a storyteller, and we all share stories in our different ways, whether, and it doesn't matter what medium you use. And so just really pushing back against this idea of, it has to be like quote unquote fine art, and it has to, that it just has to exist in these like traditional ways of understanding what art is. I'm really just trying to push back against that. And so some of the ways that I and also the group has started to think of how people can kind of interact with this space is by just creating installations that can be moved around, because I study and I listen to a lot of Indigenous wisdom and texts. And recently someone that I met called Jason Crazy Bear, he was talking about how Indigenous languages, the word for certain objects and certain things include what's around them. And I was really thinking hard. For me, that really resonated with the art that I'm trying to do. It's like, it's not just a painting. I wish we had word for like painting and people in one. And I really feel like language, it really just impacts so much how you think about things. And so I don't remember the exact Indigenous language that this is from, but he was talking about how the word for earth is earth grandmother. And so just, I feel like that just really shapes how you think about things. And that's really what I'm trying to do. Like, I don't exist in a container. I really exist with community that's around. And so it wouldn't be right just for the paintings to exist alone. And beyond that as well is that the folks that I'm bringing in have different skills than my own. There's people who work with sound. There's people who work with textiles. There's people who work with moving image. And so it's really just about creating a space that feels like home for us, because I feel like gallery spaces historically have not felt like home for a lot of black, brown, queer folks, they have been spaces where people go to gaze at us, but not necessarily to understand and to change behavior. And that's really what I'm trying to do. Like, I want the stories that are going to be shared to really kind of spark this understanding that people have of what their role on this planet is, what their role within their community is, how can they be accountable to just to the well-being of what's around them. And that really does come with thinking alternatively about the space and thinking about, okay, how can this be an immersive experience? I really want people to take away from this the role and responsibility that they have really to the planet and to each other. And so it is definitely going to be political. I think all art is political, and mine definitely is. And yeah, I want people to be inspired, but I feel like I want them to like think about things in a way that they haven't before.